Welcome to the Short-Term Rental Playmaker Podcast, where we break down what it really takes to win in short-term rentals in today's market. From insider tips and emerging trends to real conversations with top playmakers in the space, this show gives you the tools, strategies, and mindset to build and scale a successful short-term rental business. Now, here's your host, Joe Roney.
Today's episode is brought to you by Savvy STRRRR Agents, the short-term rental real estate experts helping investors find profitable vacation rental properties nationwide. If you're serious about scaling your STR portfolio, Savvy STRRRR Agents should be your first call.
Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Short-Term Rental Playmaker Podcast. I am honored to have the Short-Term Secret Investor of the Month with me today, Mr. Tom Ackley. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on, Joe. I wasn't expecting that little kudos here, but
I saw that post today, so I had to bring that up. So
yeah, I've been in STR Secrets for 2 years now, and I've really enjoyed myself there. I've learned a lot of good things. The systems within my business are so much better.
Yep, I was with the Short-Term Secrets Mastermind for a while for the same reasons. The systems are amazing. The people are amazing. If you are growing a co-hosting or management business, there is not a better group to be around than with that group.
I agree.
So tell the listeners a little bit about, obviously you're in that Short-Term Secret Mastermind. You've been doing short-term rentals for quite a while. You know, kind of what got you started and what your portfolio looks like today.
Sure. I used to be a sergeant with Milwaukee Police. I was there for 17 years. I started investing in short-term rentals back in 2020 myself. And then within a couple of years, I started managing my first few properties. And I realized at first it might be a good path to make a couple extra dollars to go on vacation more. And then I realized I could completely replace my job. So I ended up leaving the police department 8 years before I could retire, just left. I enjoy this more. It's better for the family. I'm never going to miss a baseball game for the kids.
Yep.
And we're continually growing. So I think I'd have to count 7 or 8 and then manage another 30 or 35, somewhere around there.
Wow. That's quite the management portfolio. What does your team look like for something like that? Because a lot of people that have these management companies, you know, that's a big part is what your team looks like that helps you get that done.
Sure. This is my favorite part. Working with my virtual assistants, but they're not mine. The virtual assistants that I work with in the Philippines, we've got a team of 3 where we actually just hired a 4th today. They handle so much of our back end business. They're now to the point. I've been working with Jessica for 4 years, Wang for 3 years. They now have meetings aside for me to assess, analyze, and solve a lot of the problems before it even comes to my plate. They handle guest communication a lot better than I ever could. They're kind, compassionate, patient, problem solvers. I've got a part-time ops manager. I actually met at the police department, and she quit to be a stay-at-home mom. Never had any experience with STRs. Hired her a year and a half ago, and she is kind of like the mom of the business. She works 2-3 hours a day. And then I've got a business partner who acts as my CFO and bookkeeper, compliance guy.
Nice. I mean, that's a good team. I mean, that's, you know, it's really kind of a small team when you really think about it for the amount of properties that you're managing and everything else. I mean, you think about these big management companies that have 40 plus properties, they have teams of 10, 15, 20 people to manage a portfolio like that. And you're able to do it with just a handful. That's pretty impressive.
Yeah. It's all about the systems, tracking maintenance, tracking communication, reconciling the day of that expense happens. When I started the business, we had one WhatsApp group that managed the entire business. And if that maintenance item didn't get addressed immediately, it just disappeared. Now we've got tickets that open up in Monday, whichever ops specialist receives that ticket or whoever finds out about that issue, they open up the ticket in Monday where we store all of our task management, and we've got our systems that just work themselves out.
Awesome.
So nothing gets missed.
Nope, that's huge. And where are your properties mostly?
We've got over a dozen down in the Smokies. I've got a bunch up here in Wisconsin in Door County, like the thumb of Wisconsin. The towns only have 1,000 or more that live there, but we get about 2.5 million visitors a year. And then co-host a few down in Gulf Shores, Alabama.
Okay, nice. So you're still living in the Wisconsin area?
Yes, we've got kids here. I got a 12 and a 15-year-old. I'm not taking them out of school anytime soon. So we're here in Wisconsin still dealing. I'm going to get snow tomorrow.
Nice. I spent some time actually in my previous life. I was a district manager for Sears, and I opened a couple Sears stores in the Milwaukee market, and that is where I found Spotted Cow, and I have been a fan ever since.
Well,
so
when we meet next, I'll make sure to bring a 24-pack for you.
Yes. It's funny. I actually usually, if I see somebody traveling there, I'm asking them if they drove or they flew, and if they drove, I'm telling them I'm Venmoing them $50 so they can bring me back some, because you can't get it anywhere else. So
nope.
For those of you out there that don't know what Spotted Cow is, just Google it, find it, you'll love it, I promise. So, well, I'm excited to have you on today because we're going to do something a little bit different on this podcast. Everybody talks about how to get into real estate investing. And, one of the biggest struggles that people get into is how do you come up with enough down payments to keep doing this? And some of the biggest, real estate portfolios of people that I've met have done it through the BRRRR strategy on being able to go in and find those value add properties, do those value add, refinance, take that money out and do it again, so they don't have to keep saving money for those next down payments. And so we're going to kind of deep dive a little bit in there. So tell me about some of the, types of BRRRRs that you've kind of been involved in or helped underwrite, up to this point. Have you kind of dove into anything deep on that or high level type stuff?
I like underwriting properties. I like underwriting properties every day. I try analyzing them, trying to figure out what the best comps are. Most of my purchases, let me see, 1, 2, 3, 4 in the Smokies that we own, they were 10% down vacation home loans. But like you said, that 10% is just sitting there now.
Yep.
I did a BRRRR here in Milwaukee, ended up selling that one. I just didn't want to invest in short-term rentals in Milwaukee. That was when COVID was starting. But we bought that with a hard money loan. We were able to finish the rehab under budget and under schedule, which never happens.
Yeah.
And I ended up selling the property just because I didn't want to hold on to an STRRRR at the beginning of COVID in Milwaukee. That same year, though, me and another partner did one up in Sister Bay, Wisconsin. It was more of a slow BRRRR where it took us close to 2 years to do the refi. But that refi put a down payment on another purchase. So the first property up in Wisconsin, I think we bought for $280. I think we put in 90 or 100 in rehab, and that was a lot of sweat equity. And I think it was valued close to 400 when we did the refi.
Awesome.
So, yeah.
So you're able to pretty much refi, pull that money back out of it. So pretty much you're all in on that property, $0 out of pocket or very little out of pocket.
Yeah, and that's one of my favorite properties. The purchase price back in 2020 was really fun, and the interest rate was really fun. But
yes.
Even when we're underwriting properties now, you can still find good properties that are on the market where there is room for potential. They're just probably a little harder to find. You need the right agent. You need to understand the data a little better.
Yeah, I think the biggest mistake I see investors make, and I take on anywhere from 6 to 12 new investor calls every single week with Savvy, and 50% or more, like I'm looking for turnkey, 20% ROI, I need to hire a manager, and just completely unrealistic expectations. I mean, maybe you could have done that in 2020, but in today's market, it's not an option. And
right.
and you have to be more strategic. And the BRRRR, or what I like to call the STRRRR strategy, can be a great way to do it. So the most recent one that I sold in Panama City Beach last year is I had a client that bought a property. It's a mile from the beach. So it was nobody, really thought you'd be buying something a mile from the beach and being successful. And they bought the 2-story house for $550, but it was on a half-acre lot. And to be that close to the beach, there is not many areas that you can be a mile from the beach and have a half acre, especially for under $500,000 or just over $500,000. And they went in and they renovated the inside and outside and put about $250. Now that was sweat equity. He brought his own everything, right? He brought his own backhoe. He brought his own skid steer. He brought his own crew with him to do the work, but all in $250,000 is what he put into the deal out of pocket. So he's $800 total all in. Obviously, his down payment on the initial at at his 550 purchase price, he only had to have 100,000 at closing, so he's about 350 all in. And currently, right now, on the books for this year, he's at 175K gross, and that's really only through July. We're projecting about 225, maybe 230, for him to finish out the year in gross revenue. Net revenue is still, we'll say net revenue about 180, 190, if you take cleaning fees out of there, on a 800,000 all-in purchase. So
it's over 20%.
Well over 20%. And on top of that, we haven't gotten the refi back yet. So I can't say what it's going to actually refi at, but as far as the new appraisal. But when I pull comps, I'm looking at somewhere between 950 and 1.1 is what we're looking at on what the ARV is. And this is where the biggest miss that we're going to kind of talk about here is getting that ARV is crucial in your planning, right? I mean, when you're doing a BRRRR strategy, how are you underwriting to plan, how much you can put into it so you know what you can get out of it?
It always depends. I'm thinking about this property here. The perfect BRRRR is you have $0 left into it when you refi out of it.
Yes.
But this property you're talking about, if it's netting 180 and he has to leave 100 grand into it, that's still a really small down payment for something that's going to net 180. So you're getting a really good return on his dollar, and that's at your low end of your ARV. Would you say 950?
Yeah.
Yeah. So what's 80% of 950? He's got about 100 grand into it, and then his upside is $0 into $1 million home a year and a half, 2 later. That's netting 180 in rent, 2.25 gross. So it all depends on the investor, depends on their goals. I talk with a lot of clients that want to use their vacation rental, and that's not how it's not how I try to invest anymore. I want to buy properties and assets that make me money and then go on vacation from the profit. Just opens things up a little better to invest better. Where if you plan on using it yourself, you've got the emotional attachment. There's probably a better chance, generally speaking, of not being able to find as good of a deal, because now you're thinking about how it's going to fit my family instead of how the market wants to pay for it, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. And we can go in and look at, like what's the best case scenario. So the best BRRRR that I've seen is what Tyler Kuhn posted, about a month ago. And I'm sure you saw it. I'm sure you read about it. 900K purchase price. Went in and put around $300,000 in it. And when they put $300,000 in it, they just didn't go in and design it and make it nice. They added square footage. They turned a garage into square footage. They added bathrooms. They added bedrooms, the whole works. But they were 300 grand all in at $1.2 million. And that appraisal came back over $2 million. And not only did they refi out of it, they cashed out a couple $100,000 to go buy a whole nother property to do it again.
Was that one that was designed by Ishida also?
Yes, it was.
Yeah. So with these, preaching to the choir here, you have to have a good designer that knows what they're doing, that can analyze the return on the money invested on these redesigns. And Ishida is as good as it gets in this field here.
Yep, and I think the other part of that is you also have to understand your market. You can do this in Asheville, North Carolina. Ishida did one of these in Bourbon Trail, Kentucky, and it went under contract a couple times to sell, and it wouldn't appraise because there wasn't any comps to get it to appraise, right? So they ended up getting a cash buyer. Everything was good, and the property's still doing $300,000 on about a $1.2 million all-in purchase and design, which is phenomenal, but the appraised value is less than $1 million when it's all said and done.
Right.
So technically they're upside down, but they're bringing in hundreds of thousands of dollars of net revenue, which, when you look at it as your long-term investment, is easily going to pay for itself. And if you're smart, you're going to take that net revenue and pay down your principal over that period of time. It's probably going to catch up to you on the appraised value within a couple of years. And these are, on a STRRRR or a BRRRR, this is long-term buy and holds. This is not flippers, right? So we're looking at long-term investment when we're talking about this.
Yeah, that's why I said kind of depends on the buyer and their goals. I've talked to a few people and I'm sure you have too, where buying that for cash, it makes sense to them. They want the tax benefits, the bonus depreciation. They don't care if they're on paper underwater by 200. They're getting a good return on their dollar.
Yep.
So.
And that's, everybody's got different goals, and there's people out there that have a lot more cash than I can even think about right now that can just write checks for some of these things. But,
right.
But it happens, and there's investors that are out there that are doing that. So the one that I sent you today that we're going to kind of dissect a little bit. So this is a property. It's very similar to the subject property that I just talked about, that they bought it for $550. It's a 2,000 square foot home. They added, they didn't add square footage, but they turned a living room into another bedroom. They, created a 5-bedroom home. That's where we're going to get that ARV. So this property that I sent you on Laurie Avenue is very similar. It's a 2,000 square foot ranch, but it's on 2/3 of an acre lot. So it's a even bigger lot. It already has the in-ground pool, but, and the interior doesn't need a major, anything major on the inside. There's a dining area that we can turn into to make it a 5th bedroom or a 4th bedroom. And then there's a studio that could easily be split to turn into 2 different bedrooms instead of having 2 different kitchens. I would probably remove the kitchen on this one and create this a 5-bedroom home, because now you're sleeping 15 people on a 5-bedroom home, 14 people, something like that. And you're getting to that revenue type, that heads and beds, magic number. But on this one, exterior wise. So what do you look at on exterior wise when that's going to be able to add value to the property?
What your preferred guest wants to spend money on. So who's going to PCB? It's going to be a family with kids. The mom and dad are going to want to spend some time watching the kids play in the pool, have fun, have their own resort situation. Up in Wisconsin here, a pool would work, but it's not the same amenities. It depends on who your guest is. So down here, I'd be thinking about, especially with this backyard, I'd be thinking about putting a few extra amenities in to keep the kids happy, keep the kids busy. I'd want to look at AirDNA and Price Labs, see what the data tells me to put certain amenities. I would look at hot tubs. Doesn't really sound like the right thing to do in Panama City Beach, but it's pretty interesting looking at the data. Hot tubs in a lot of these beach markets end up increasing the ARV. And I'm sorry, not the ARV, but the yearly gross revenue. And a lot of times you get your hot tub cost back in that first year with the increased revenue, if not more. 100% return on that investment. That's pretty good.
Yeah, way more than 100% return.
Yeah. So up by me, I think I added 30,000 when I added a hot tub year over year. Yeah. That was a pretty decent ROI. So yeah, this 2/3 property or 2/3 acre property that you sent me, plenty of space back here. I would want to try to make this its own resort, lots of colors. I want the Airbnb potential guest to stop scrolling when they're flipping through PCB houses. And the distance from the beach needs to be overcome by amazing over-the-top features where they know their kids are going to be safe, have fun, and enjoy their family vacation they're going to spend a lot of money on.
Yeah, and it's a bigger backyard than the subject property that I talked about, that my other clients did. And in that backyard, they added a playground. They added a big fire pit area, a pickleball court with basketball hoops on each side. They added a putting green area, cornhole boards, and a screened-in porch patio. This one already has the pool and the screened-in patio, so bonus there. But a lot of space for that pickleball and basketball. And I like to compare this to what's happening in Bradenton. If you know anything what's happening in Bradenton, everybody in Bradenton is creating these backyard experiences, because Bradenton, it's a 15-minute drive to get to the beach, right? You're not a walk to the beach if you're buying in Bradenton, because it's hard in that market to be close to the beach because it's way too expensive in Clearwater and Anna Marie and these
millions.
You're in the millions. So if you want to be successful, you're going to be a 10 to 15-minute drive from the beach in that market. So everybody is creating these experiences. What I found in PCB is nobody's doing it yet, because the majority of the homes in our market is actually beach houses with 50-foot by 100-foot lots. So this small community is really the only community in the entire my area that this actually works in. So, it's going to be kind of like it could be its own little Bradenton and have half a dozen or a dozen of these and still not even become close to being saturated.
I'm going to let you sell yourself a little more here. You were just touching on something that's really important to me when I'm underwriting properties. I need to be talking to somebody that knows the block by block neighborhood. They need to know if the property is legal, how to work through the municipality. It could be in an HOA that is not very STR friendly, work through some state laws, but also what you just described. When I punched this property into B&B Calc, that's one of my favorite data analyzing systems that, spits out generic revenue potential numbers. It says $67,000.
Yep.
You and I both know that the potential for this is a lot more than 67, but as a 3-3 hosting 9 people, that's probably accurate. But then once we start adding those extra beds, and that's where a really good agent who knows the market, who knows the potential and can show those very few properties that are hitting that potential. That's why working with a good agent that really knows what's going on in the market matters a lot.
It does. And in property like this, it's a higher risk, right? Because there's not a lot of people doing it, right? So I can't give you a bunch of data points to say, yep, if you do this, this, and this, you're going to do this, right? It is a little bit of a risk. This other couple did this, and this was their very first short-term rental. They had owned 8 long-terms, and he had a vision and said, I want to do it. And she didn't even use a revenue manager. She was 8 months pregnant while they were finishing up this property and has an infant now while she's trying to figure out revenue management, and somehow has $175,000 on the books, which is double my beachfront properties right now that she has on the books for this year. Now, because it's rare, there's no other properties like it. So, they've become the unicorn, and that's the one thing that every influencer in this space, preaches. The Kenny Bedwells or Bill Face or anyone else that talks. How do you get that moat? How do you become the unicorn? And properties like this is how you do it.
The backyard resort, the play set, the pool, pickleball, moat.
Yep, putting greens. You could almost do a 12 or 18 hole putt golf course in this backyard, like full on, everything. The question is now, the second part of this is in the underwriting, because we also have to think about ARV and what is that exit plan, right? So you do want to, put in those things, but also don't go in there and spend $500,000 because now you're upside down, right? So so I do think the underwriting part of budgeting. So what's kind of the best tool for that when you're in the unknown, like this on what you could potentially get it to refi and get back out of it later?
As many data points as you can find. Try to get as much MLS info on sold properties in the area that are legitimate comps, in the same neighborhoods, same bedroom count, same square footage, but try to get the most high-end properties in that sold comp set. And then I usually start with the revenue first and start with cash on cash return on investment, and then see if that BRRRR idea will also work. Because if it cash flows enough, like I said before, maybe you don't have to have 100% BRRRR. But if we're taking this from a 3-bedroom to a 5-bedroom, my very initial back of the napkin math would not be an agent. I'm just going to sold 5 bedrooms in this neighborhood that are roughly 2,000 square feet. And if I'm looking at 800,000 instead of what's this listed at 650?
650.
Hypothetically, if we're looking at 800,000 that I'm seeing as an average, I would text somebody like you, hey Joe, this is what I'm looking at. Is this data relatively accurate? Is it what you're seeing too? What are some of the best comps you're seeing? Because maybe I'm missing something. Maybe I'm over exaggerating what that ARV could be. Because like you said, it's very important with the overall strategy. If you want to make it a perfect BRRRR, you have to have really good data. If you want that cash flow and you're willing to take that extra risk for that cash flow, maybe you leave 5 or 10% into it, and that's still a big win.
Yeah, I agree. And this property is not going to sell at 650, by the way. And I'll tell everyone you're listening, do not pay full price for any property anywhere right now in the nation. It is a buyer's market. So we are going to negotiate deals, and I've gotten deals anywhere from 30 to 100K under asking. So realistically, I like this property for about 575. When I actually went through and underwrote it, I was like, okay, I believe we could get it to appraise in the 850 mark at 2,000 square foot as a 5-bedroom. And if we can get it in there for about 575 and try to get that backyard done for about 150 to 200, because the interior doesn't need a lot. You're probably going to need to put 50,000 all in the interior. Definitely going to have to put in about 100K in the exterior, depending on how much you actually do. And obviously you could go in and easily put in 300,000. Don't get me wrong. You could.
Is there a return on that though?
That's
where
you have to
need to understand your data.
Yep.
Yeah.
And there could be some of that area. This actually does have an area in the backyard that has RV parking, that actually has RV hookups with its own electric. So you could even corner that off and put that as its own unit and just give them their own space as an Airbnb to rent an RV space or put an RV back there. It's also in an unincorporated area where there's really no restrictions. So you could even add an ADU in this property. So there's, 2/3 of an acre a lot here that you could, you can't split the lot. They're not going to let you do that, but you also could add an ADU and get additional bedrooms, get to that, another 2-2 or a 2-1, on that back corner.
Another potential $40,000-$60,000 of revenue right there.
Yep, especially if you get multi-families, and I'll be it's actually interesting when I talked to the couple that built this house. I asked them, who's renting their property, and they said they can't believe how many baseball teams and basketball teams and sports teams, youth sports teams are renting it, and they're getting half the team in there because now their kids have a whole experience. Because if you're here for a baseball tournament, you don't want your kids at the beach all day getting super hot and tired. But if you have an outdoor experience for them to hang out with, that's a huge win.
My 15-year-old just walked in. I coached his baseball team for the last, 8 or 9 years. Whenever he would make it to the playoffs, we would always have to yell at all of the kids that it's not pool day today.
Yes. I did the same thing. I coached select softball for 11 years, so I am with you on that.
We've had a couple of games where they come, they just need to take a nap. It's like, it's playoff time, guys.
Yes. Yes. It happens. Go ahead.
I was going to say the other aspect of the BRRRR strategy is what loan can you get, right? So if you can get a 75% loan and that's the best LTV loan you can get, that makes a big difference compared to cashing out at 80 or 85%. What sort of loans have you seen with STRRRs?
So we actually have a really great credit union in PCB that I work with, and we were actually looking at a new build, and they do an 80% LTC, up front, interest only during construction. Don't even have to make any payments. You just accrue the interest and pay it at the end. And that interest only is I think it starts at 6.5 and it jumps to about 8.5 once you hit 6 months. And if you go past 10 months, then it jumps to like 10, 11. So, it's on if you get it done in time, you're in great shape if you extend your build. But on a BRRRR, on how they do it, I haven't actually had a conversation with them on what their BRRRR loans, but I will tell you that if you're looking at getting, BRRRR type loans, those local credit unions and local banks are going to be the best place to go. You're not going to, our DSCR lenders that are working with mortgage companies for that type of product. Right. It's definitely going to those local banks, or as you said, hard money lenders.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Hard money for the first few months. The local credit unions, they always seem to have better rates, better understanding of the market. They trust the market better. It's a lot more relationship driven. So you can get some better terms with these refis.
It is. And I will tell you my recommendation for anyone that's going to do this is don't just call them. Don't pick up the phone and call them. Walk into the office, make an appointment, sit down with them, tell them your business plan, tell them what you do, sell them on what you do, because that is going to go a much longer way. And on top of that, if, when they're asking you for what those, your documents, your tax returns, your financials, all that stuff, have that on a thumb drive or have that on your Google Drive that you can send it to them while you're in the office, right? This is something I learned from the bank whisperer, John Hodge, is how to get financing, and to truly get financing is know your shit and walk in there and be confident and have
Right.
everything that they would need, and don't be the person that's like, oh, I can get it to you next week. Oh, I can get it to you in 2 weeks. They don't want to deal with people like that. They want to deal with business owners.
Act like a professional.
Yep. It goes a
Just
long way.
Right. Just like with the property management side, systems. We need systems to apply for the loans to get the best terms and get the approvals. I always kind of think of casting a wide net. You deal with this more than I do, so you probably have a little more experience. But I think about casting a wide net. I'll still talk to the national lenders, but even if you take out the national lenders, there's still several credit unions in the area where if the credit union you're recommending may not be excited about lending this quarter, there might be a credit union on the other side of town that is. So I've seen so many people think they can't get a loan. Well, how many banks do you call? I called Chase.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Yep. I got a quick story for that. My wife and I own a preschool. And when we decided to buy a preschool, and this is all the way back in 2005 to 2007, we went into the first bank and we told them, we want $1 million loan and the whole works. And they pretty much laughed at us, right? I mean, I think I was 26. My wife was 24 at the time. 2 young kids walking in, asking for $1 million loan. But that wasn't the right bank, right? We knew that. And then we put together our business plan and we put together our finances and what we wanted to do. And then I think it took us 9 or 10 different banks to get the deal done. And actually, when we ended up getting the deal done, one bank took on 50% of our loan. The small business SBA took on 40% of our loan, and then we had to do a 10% down, and then we had to have some money in reserves. But there's a way to get it done. And people always talk about creative financing as being, doing, seller financing or just doing a sub two. No, there's a lot of different ways of creative financing. And sometimes it's working with different lenders and different banks to be able to get it done.
Banks that want to be on your side, be on your team because they see your vision and they see the systems that you have with your flash drive.
Yes. Yep. They see your financials. They see that you're organized. They see that you're ready to go. And you're not just somebody coming in and, asking. We got laughed at the first time because when we walked into that bank, we didn't have any of that stuff. We had no idea what we were doing. We were young kids just trying to buy a daycare at the time. And, so it took a little bit of learning and understanding that. And of course, now after talking with John Hodge, my conversations at banks are totally different. Like I'm walking in with a plan on day one and it goes a long way.
My first mortgage was a VA loan on a duplex. I never heard of the term house hacking. I never thought that you had to put a down payment when you buy a house. That's where I started. And after I realized how the rest of the world works, if you don't have a VA loan, holy buckets, this is something.
Yeah. The rest of us that don't get those VA loans, I mean, my first was a 3.5%, FHA loan. So it wasn't like I had to own a $90,000 house, our first home. So wasn't like we had to have a big down payment, but yes, most loans 10 to 20%. So if you had somebody that was getting into, looking into getting in doing their BRRRR, or getting into that part of the business, what are a couple of pieces of advice you would give them right now, besides what we talked about on getting started on the underwriting side of it?
Narrowing down goals for the property, for the investment. That's usually the first thing I want to discuss. And I want to figure out why they have those goals. Because almost everybody I talk to starts off with, I want to go there because I like it there and I want it to make a lot of money. And then I start digging into the whys behind each one of those. And most every time, it comes down to the investment, not as much as the personal asset, right? So it's more of relationship building, understanding the goals for that person, for the family, why they want their money invested, where the money's coming from. And then we'll talk about risk tolerance. There's plenty of folks that I've talked to where a condo in 100 condo development is perfect for them. That's the risk tolerance. They're fine with high HOA fees, but more things are handled for them. Whereas this place on Laurie, that's a higher risk investment, but the payoff is higher potential for paying off quite a bit more, right?
Yep.
So the first thing I dig into pretty deep is goals. And then I can start working back from those and keep digging into the why, if that makes sense.
Yeah, but you said you like B&B Calc. Is that one of your favorite tools to really dig in?
Yeah, I'll use all of them. I use AirDNA quite a bit. I use B&B Calc is my first one I go to. They do have a fun update coming in a few weeks, so watch out for that one. Yeah. I'm really looking forward to that one. Anyways, B&B Calc is usually the first one because it initially pulls a really long list of comps for me to look at.
Yeah.
So when I ran this place on Lori in B&B Calc, I'm seeing comps that are doing 30 up to 110. But I also know that if I'm going to be changing this to a 5-bedroom with all these amenities, that entire comp list is garbage.
Yep. So
I can use that list as a really good discussion point when I'm talking with an investor, and I can clearly show them with data, with actual comps, this is what it could do if you don't do anything. And then you start talking about a return. You buy it, let's say you pay 600 for it, but it's going to gross 70. You're probably losing money, especially with a PM in place.
Yes.
Whereas if we do this STR strategy, the STRRRR strategy, or what did you call it?
STRRRR. The STRRRR.
Yeah.
Yes.
If we do that, let's follow this path along, try to get it for 575. We put X amount of money in, we use this type of loan. We can more than double the revenue. And these are the comps that are doing 150, 175. And there's the data to show we're going from 60 to 75 up to 150 to 175. And there's so many conversations within that path. All sorts of different data sets based on what the market is doing. So we can find, I was looking on Airbnb and I found some amazing properties that have the place that I bet this one that I'm looking at right now is your client's. Because I do see the play set in the backyard. I do see the pickleball, and it's priced accordingly.
Yep, it's got a mural behind the pickleball court that says Panama City or Panama City Beach, I think. Yep, that's their property, and she painted that mural herself at 8 months pregnant. So,
jeez, but these properties stand out so quickly. There's so few comps. It is higher risk because there's only 1 or 2 comps. Yep. But when that example is working so well, and you look at the calendar on Airbnb and you can see the nightly prices during the high season and the low season by the unbooked nights, and you can see that they have quite a bit of the summer already booked out, but the unbooked nights are still significantly higher than anybody else on the market. The guests that are coming to PCD want that product. And how do we match that or make it better?
When you were pulling comps, I got to ask, did you find the clothing optional one?
I didn't. I looked for a couple. I have discussed that in the past as a comp.
There is a comp in this community that's a clothing optional, and they do about $200,000 a year, and I think it's a 6-bedroom duplex, and it's got walls around it and a pool, and they advertise it. Pool. They advertise it as a clothing optional resort, and they stay very, very full.
Yeah, I remember looking at this one with you as when we were underwriting something last winter, I think, right?
Yep.
Does that sound about right? Yeah.
Yep. So yeah, it's an interesting one, right? It's a moat. It's unique. It's,
right.
It's, it's what you got to do to be successful in this space. You can't just buy turnkey and go out and get a good ROI anymore. You have to look at what that options are. So,
have you seen in the last 6 months any property turnkey that you can do over 20% return in PCB?
I sold one last week. And I'm going to tell you, it's the first one that I've done. And the client bought it for $860, and we're projecting 160 to 170. It was already professionally designed with a
right off the shelf, huh?
right off the shelf. It's the first one that I've sold like this in 3.5 years of selling real estate in PCB. And when it came on the market, I had a client that's what he wanted, and I'm like, this is it. If you don't buy it today, I'm going to send it out to 5 other people that are going to buy it. So you have like 8 hours to make a decision right now if you want this property or not, because it's a really great property. And actually, we had it under contract for $875. It appraised at $845, but the seller wouldn't come down to $845 because they did do $100,000 design. We met him in the middle, and he did have to pay $15K out of pocket for the, above the appraised value. But that's minimal considering he already had a really amazing $100K design, brand new in-ground pool, everything. It's he did go in. I take it back. He did actually go in and take out the bunks that they had in there and have my built-in bunk guy and put built-in, because built-ins just perform better than your standard, Amazon Wayfair bunks. So he did spend 10 grand in that bunk room to put in some built-ins, queen over queen bunks. But other than that, everything else was turnkey. They had even turned the garage into a game room with a mini split, painted black, and the whole works. So
all of that. To be clear, though, that's the anomaly, right?
It is very, very rare that's going to happen. The majority of the people that are selling in today's market are people that bought in 21 to 23. They bought thinking this was a get-rich-quick scheme. They didn't invest in their property, and now they're losing money. And they're like, I don't know why I'm losing money. I have this property that I bought, and they didn't do anything to it. And that's the majority. Yeah.
I'm not sure if you've seen the same data, but the overall revenue per listing has gone up. Occupancy has gone up a little bit nationwide, but the middle of the field is being compressed, and the middle of the field is dipping while it's the top few percent that are significantly increasing in average daily rate, year over year revenue. The best of the best are improving, and the middle tier, like what you're talking about, they worked in 2020, but now they're making 40% less than they did a few years ago because they have left the property where it is, and it's just average.
Yep. That thing that you talked about, the hot tub at the beach, everyone thinks, well, why would you want a hot tub at the beach? Well, guess what? We booked October through February in my hot tubs when people that didn't have hot tubs sat empty, right? Because in the winter months, I don't care how good your heated pool is. Yes, you can get in it, and I can heat my pools to 90 degrees, but when it's 40 degrees out, nobody wants to get into an 88 to 90 degree pool, but they will go jump in that hot tub when it gets to 40 degrees at night. And my houses with hot tubs and heated pools do well. Don't get me wrong. The heated pools are a big advantage as well. But if you have a swimming pool that's not heated at the beach market, it's the same as not having a pool when it gets to the shoulder season.
Yeah, you've got 90 days to rent it out, and that's about it.
Yeah, so you got to have that heated pool function in there. But the hot tub, those little things, the honest truth is you make your money in the shoulder season at the beach when everybody else is sitting empty. My 4-4, that's 3 blocks from the beach, 2.5 blocks. I did $5,800 in January when most of my competitors sat empty and didn't get a single booking. So
that's beautiful. Yes. I love to hear it.
I mean, that's
excited about that.
When I build out $40,000 over my 10 properties for January. No, it's not a lot of money. No, I'm going to bill out 400,000. We'll do 400,000 in revenue in July, but 40,000 in January is better than zero. And it's because we have heated pools and amenities and things for people to do in those winter months. So when the occupancy in the market's 20%, how do you capture that? And you got to have the best house to do it.
Right. Yeah. It's very similar to my Wisconsin markets. It's cold. Nobody visits in the winter. If there's 10 families going, I'm going to host 7 of them. It's my properties across my portfolio up there. We've done the same thing. We've invested in the shoulder season amenities. Hot tubs are nice during the summer, but they really hit in the fall, in winter and spring, and almost nobody goes to this area except to stay at my places.
Yeah.
That's fun.
Exactly. Well, Tom, I have definitely loved having you on to kind of chat through this. I hope this was beneficial for those out there, looking to get into this space and understanding you don't need to just dump a bunch of down payments into turnkey properties. I am going to do a little segment on building new because building is another great avenue for getting into short-term rentals. And we're actually looking to build our first one right now. So there are some great lending options to where you potentially could build a brand new property, and at the end of it, do a cash out. When you go to refinance and get the money out, potentially be no money into a property on a brand new build. And I've talked to a few people that are doing this. I know one of my friends. Okay, you've done that. So
I'm in the process right now. We're working on a modular in Gulf Shores right now. We're expected to be at about 75% of the ARV.
Awesome. And that's, it's another great way to go in and get into this space without having to dump, hundreds of thousands of dollars into down payment. as long as you have some patience. All of these are going to take some patience. You know, if you are looking for cash flow today, this is not the way to buy a property for you. You know, if you're looking for cash flow in the future and long-term, you know, investment, this is a great way to get into this space.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, if somebody wanted to hire you to do their property management or go into co-host for them in your markets, how can they get a hold of you and get in touch?
You can find me on LinkedIn and Facebook, Tom Ackley. Otherwise, my website, getawayandstay.com.
You can definitely find him on Facebook. Definitely one of I think Tom might post as much as I do when it comes to these Facebook groups. Very active, always having value add conversations. We really appreciate that, and I love how much you give back to the community in that aspect of it. So
I do like that about the short-term rental space. There's so many people that are willing to help, especially the best. I've found a lot of the best hosts like yourself. They want to help. They want to give back. I wouldn't be here with the people that helped me a few years ago. So I just want to give back all the time, you know.
It's that abundance mindset. You know, we all can win. Somebody else doesn't have to lose for us to win. So is somebody else going to lose? Yes, there is going to be some people that lose because they don't go out and do what it takes. And it's just like with any business. You got to treat it like a business. But I do love the fact that there's so many people in this space that are willing to just give back. And if the more you can give out for free, it's always going to come back to you tenfold. You know, instead of trying to sell every single item and every single program that you can, you don't have to do that to be able to be successful in this space. So
you got it.
Awesome. Well, thanks again for joining me. Thank you guys for coming on and listening to the Short Term Rental Playmaker podcast. I'll talk to you next week.